This is the word of the Lord.
Can't hear that phrase, weeping and gnashing of teeth, without remembering a story you told me. What if I don't have any teeth? Teeth will be provided. Yeah, anyway, it's a good story. There are some gently disturbing and gently comforting truths in this morning's story from Jesus. I don't think many of us here are farmers, are we? No. But I think even most of us who are city slickers can understand the point here. I think the best place to start is the clear reminder that good seed gives rise to a good crop. Even though there is an almost immediate focus on the weeds in this story, the more important focus is on a healthy crop. That's what farmers are actually on about. The gospel always produces a healthy harvest. Whenever that seed is spread about and hits receptive soil, there will be a crop. And rather than being intimidated or distracted by the activity of any enemy, we are to be encouraged by the reliability of the quality of the seed we have in spreading the gospel, and that people who are the fruit of that gospel, the people of God, are fruitful as well. The reaction of the workers to want to pull out the weeds, while perhaps very natural and perfectly understandable, is in a sense a focus on the wrong bit. These workers are not tasked with ensuring there are no weeds. Their task is to cultivate and bring in a useful crop. If the seed is good, we can be confident it will be fruitful. That much is quite reassuring, I think. It's not simply that it's not simply the crop that seeds produce, but the seeds that the crop produces. So you have seeds and they produce a crop, and that crop produces seeds, right? That's how farming works, I understand. We plant one seed, and if it's healthy, in turn it produces many seeds. That's somewhat natural, even if miraculously mysterious to us at the same time. The multiplying effect when good seed is used is everywhere in nature. We do not expect new crops to terminate the species. We expect further seeds to be produced. We expect these seeds to produce further crops, and we will produce further seeds from those further crops, and so on. David mentioned last week, nature is somewhat extravagant, and I think this is further evidence of that. There is a superabundant abundance of potential, such that even when a small portion of the seed takes root and matures, it produces even more abundance. And in this way, it is a metaphor for human culture, I think. That which we cultivate grows and develops from that which we previously cultivated. One magnitude of abundance building on another magnitude of abundance, and in this way we make ever greater leaps forward. And we see this in all sorts of dynamics around us in the world. I think of it at the moment. I heard a story on the radio this morning about the current challenges of the artificial intelligence revolution. Artificial intelligence is going to go ahead in leaps and bounds because they're now using artificial intelligence to develop the artificial intelligence. So it continues to refine and develop in this exponentially developing way kind of thing. It has the potential to accelerate its development process and make massive leaps. And just remember, it's a tool. It has no heart, so it can be used for really good things, diagnosing diseases and all sorts of stuff like that. And it can be used for really terrible things, manipulating people, all sorts of stuff like that, because it depends on how we use our tools as to what impact they have. We know what the good seed and the good crop is because it bears more seed and produces further crops into the future. We recognise the things that are nourishing We know what will feed us and strengthen us. There is good historical awareness about what we do well to cultivate in our culture as well. With seed crops, skilled people have honed and developed the seed stocks that we use so that they've become increasingly fruitful. I mean, we use genetic modification these days in the laboratory, but even well before that kind of science was available to the farmers made basic choices about which seed to plant, which seed to eat, which seed to feed to the animals, and which to just toss. And in this very basic process, the seed stock was refined so that the best of the best of the best was the seed that was used. We have essentially done the same thing with all sorts of things in our culture. We have developed laws and norms that protect society and guide our younger generations in the ways that it would be helpful for them to go. So, for example, in Western culture, we've made decisions about the social benefits of enfranchising every adult. First, we gave the vote to every man. And then, perhaps against the judgment of some people, we gave it to every woman as well. We have abolished slavery, at least officially. We no longer believe in the right of one person to own another person. We've come to see the social benefits of universal basic health care and universal basic education and the rule of law over the rule of brute force. And all of these things have been cultivated, and they have cultivated the most diverse and abundant society in human history. It's a very helpful thing, I think, that Jesus deals with realities, no matter how confronting or distasteful they might be. And it's abundantly clear to anyone who's been involved in life or the church for any length of time that not every person in the church or every person in society is as helpful or life-giving as each other. In the presence of some people brings blessing, encouragement, and fruitfulness, and their presence redounds to the glory of God. The presence of others has a quite different effect. In fact, it could be a range of impacts, really, but it's not blessing or encouragement or fruitfulness, and God is not glorified as a consequence of their presence. We in the church can at times err on the side of a kind of arcane niceness. It's as though we don't want to believe that people can behave in ways that are best described as evil. We see the destructive impact of their actions and behaviours, and we create a kind of elaborate, almost believable story that excuses this ill behaviour. We almost go so far as to call evil benign, pretending that if the harmful results were not the stated purpose of the person's action, then it should be considered a good intent gone wrong. And Jesus is not so clumsy. He has no trouble calling things as they are, and we would be the healthier if we were to have the same willingness, I think. But even though Jesus is happy to say some people are the sons of darkness or the devil or whatever it might be, the primary issue with the weeds, as long as we're not distracted by them, is that we should just work around them. The weeds, yes, they take up space, and yes, they use up resources that could be applied more fruitfully in other places, and they do tend to spread their fruitless presence further and further afield if left unchecked, whether in the field of the world or the church. But if you avoid them, they won't actually do you very much harm. They tend to have an impotent passivity, especially if you remain focused on the nurturing task of growing the good crop. Possibly the worst they can do is fool you into thinking that they are good. And if you turn to them expecting them to be good, you will be sorely disappointed. This can be a bitter lesson. You likely need only learn it one time. Hoping for good things from that which has nothing fruitful in it will leave you disappointed every time. So the clearest way to identify the crop from the weeds is by its fruitfulness. Jesus talks about knowing a tree by its fruit, and we see the reality of what something is in what it produces by its life. Weeds produce more weeds. There's nothing helpful nor useful in what they generate. They can only replicate what they are. The more of them there are, the greater the nuisance value they create. Weeds offer nothing to others. They take up space just like a crop, and they use up resources just like a crop, but they offer nothing fruitful or helpful or useful. They are not a crop. It becomes obvious what they are good for, and that is basically nothing. And we are not charged with doing the weeding. We shouldn't go after the weeds. It's very tempting to do that sometimes, even though they take up this valuable space and use up resources, and it's not difficult to make a case for wanting to pull up the weeds, right? But Jesus alerts us to something that in the heart of our self-justification we are prone to overlook. The farmers are not charged with gathering weeds. Their task is to cultivate a healthy crop that can grow until the time of harvest and then be gathered into the barn. Weeds are a distraction. If the farmer focused on pulling up the weeds, they would soon become experts on the eradication of things more than the cultivation of anything. The whole point is the cultivation of a healthy crop. There will always be weeds among the good crop. Should it become so dire that there's mainly weeds and hardly any crop, then you probably need to clear the field and start again. And that's a pretty radical move. But if there are good and healthy plants growing to fruition in the field, let them grow. Healthy, fruitful plants would no doubt be disrupted or destroyed in the zeal to pull up the weeds. When things are pulled up, the soil around is displaced. Pull up enough weeds and the topsoil will become destabilised. Roots of otherwise healthy crops easily become exposed to the air. The environment that gives rise to growth is messed up so much that growth begins to fail even for the good crops. Valuable plants would fail to reach their full potential. Some might wither and die altogether. And for a farmer who is interested in a harvest, such an approach would be utterly irresponsible. Weeds or no weeds, there is no decent harm. If there's no decent harvest, the rest is moot. And just as importantly, to help us kind of come to terms with the mixed reality in which we live, Jesus makes it clear that God is not mocked. It is not the case that the weeds will get harvested just like the crops and brought into a barn. It's not that we are destined to chew our food and go spit out the crappy bits that got gathered in with the grain. No, there will be a sorting. No one is confounded about what is what. Things are identified by their fruit, and that which nourishes life will not be confused with that which uselessly takes up space and needlessly uses up resources. You do not need to be God to know the difference. However, it is God's call regarding when and how these things are to be sorted. And we are relieved of that responsibility. Ours is to focus on the things that foster life, not the uprooting. God will see to the sorting. We need not get our hands dirty in that particular task, and that too is a blessing. Jesus wants us to be clear-eyed. There are a mix of people in the church, just as there are a mix of people in society, in the world. The children of God are known by their fruitfulness. They prove to be those whose fruitfulness equips others to be fruitful as well, and those others then equip others to be fruitful as well, to the blessing of the whole world. Don't give your attention to the weeds. They will get sorted at a time that is most suitable and least damaging to the faithful. And we are relieved of carrying that burden. We instead are set free to be children not of retribution or weeding out, but children of the light, children who grow and become fruitful to the glory of God. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for your extraordinary grace that continues to call us into life. There's so many other ways that tempt us. They seem so right in kind of rash moments. But you say, stay on the path of light and love and life and fruitfulness to the glory of your name. And that's what we want to do. Amen.